right around the world. Also coming up on Ticker News this hour, Taiwan sends fighters to warn off China. Ticker's Aaron Young delves into exactly what that means. Is the crypto crash finally over? We speak to Australia's crypto king. And Netflix is cracking down on password sharing. Does it affect you? I'll tell you in just a moment. But first, your top story. US President Joe Biden is calling on New Zealand's Prime Minister in the wake of last week's mass shooting in Texas. PM Jacinda Ardern was in the Oval Office where the pair spoke about gun violence. It follows a deadly shooting at the mosque in Christchurch back in 2019. Meanwhile, the US is still piecing together the impacts of the Uvalde school shooting, where 21 people were sadly gunned down.
You understand that your leadership has taken on a critical role in this global stage. It really has. Galvanizing action on climate change, a global effort to confront violence, extremism, and online, like happened at Christchurch, call, and and we want to I want to work with you on that effort, and I want to talk to you about what those conversations are like, if you're willing.
Biden says he has been to the aftermath of more shootings than any other president. The two leaders agreed to cooperate on violent extremism, gun violence, and climate change. Well, China has sent more than 30 warplanes into the Taiwan air defense zone, further escalating tensions in the region. It comes as Japan now sets up a task force to examine China's long-term ambitions. Ticker's Aaron Young has this story.
In the air, a squadron of Chinese warplanes heads for Taiwan. 30 aircraft entered into its air defense zone. It's the biggest incursion by China since January. China's increased the frequency of its air missions over recent months, claiming they're merely training drills. The latest incident included 22 fighters, as well as electronic warfare, early warning and anti-submarine aircraft. That's according to Taiwan's defense ministry. The aircraft flew in an area to the northeast of the Pratas Islands that's part of the Taiwan Air Defense Identification Zone. China sees Taiwan as a breakaway province, which it believes it can take by force if necessary. It comes as Japan now sets up a new strategy team to coordinate policies in China and analyse Beijing's movements. The Foreign Ministry says the team will examine China's plans in the medium to long term. It follows last week's visit to Japan by the US President Joe Biden. The creation of the new team comes as President Xi Jinping is expected to maintain his helm of the ruling Communist Party and as tensions between the US and China intensify.
China's response, of course, as we've seen in the last few days, is to attempt to form an alliance with 10 of the Pacific Islands off the northeast coast of Australia. And we understand that the submarine base that will be built for the nuclear submarines will be on the northeast coast of Australia. And it reminds me of the decision to buy the port of Darwin, just as the President Obama's pivot arranged for the stationing of U.S. Marines in Darwin.
Japan is now considering doubling its arms spending to acquire first strike capability. Japan has the third largest GDP in the world, though its military spending is far lower than China's. The country has had an unofficial policy since World War II to spend no more than 1% of its GDP on defence, but that could be about to change. Aaron Young, Ticker News.
Ukraine has identified more than 600 Russian war crime suspects, with around 80 of them already prosecuted. The list reportedly includes top military personnel, politicians and propaganda agents of Russia. Ukrainian authorities believe there are 200 to 300 new cases of war crimes every single day. Other European nations are also deciding to join the international call to help Ukraine identify these war criminals. They are now working with the International Criminal Court, which launched its investigation into possible war crimes back in early March. Meanwhile, US President Joe Biden says US will send advanced rocket systems to hit key targets in Ukraine. And staying in the region, Ukraine's relaxed surrogacy laws allow over 2,000 babies to be born in the country every single year. But the ongoing conflict has become a nightmare for surrogates in the war-torn country and hopeful parents watching on. Costa Haritos has this story.
These are the sounds that hundreds of surrogates are hearing in Ukraine as the war unfolds before their eyes. On the other side of the world, Emma is also watching the events unfold, but from the safety of her home in Australia, far away from the explosions, but equally as anxious. Emma is connected to the crisis because her surrogate is pregnant with her second child. More than 2,000 children are born through surrogacy in Ukraine each year.
It's hard to even imagine being pregnant and giving birth during wartime for someone that's carrying their own baby, let alone if you're carrying somebody else's baby and you're having to potentially flee to another part of the country and be separated from your own children and from your own partner, or even fleeing to another country.
While the practice has been legal for over 20 years, it is only available for married heterosexual couples. Ukraine allows the intended parents to be listed on the child's birth certificate rather than the surrogate themselves. It's a win for hopeful mothers like Emma, who was diagnosed with cancer when she was 28 weeks pregnant with her first child.
We thought we'd gotten through the hard bit for having her second child. You know, we'd made embryos, we found a surrogate was pregnant. That had taken 5 years. When everything is meant to be going right again, something changes and everything falls apart again.
With the help of her surrogacy agency, Emma recently made contact with others in Ukraine, many of whom were fleeing the conflict. Emma's surrogate travelled to Moldova in a moment of bittersweet relief. She was safe, but Moldova's strict surrogacy laws weren't ideal for Emma and her husband. It's the reality facing many couples as volunteers look after newborns who are unable to be united with their intended parents.
So we look after them. We cannot leave them behind. How could that ever be possible? They're tiny creatures.
Costa Haritos, Ticker News.
Investment banker Jason Chung has joined Ride Blockchain as the head of corporate development. Chung will work on capital markets and financing deals at the company, which focuses on large-scale mining over in the US. Now, Ride Blockchain has the largest Bitcoin mining and hosting facility in Northern America. The company was a biotech equipment maker until it renamed itself in 2017 to reflect its new focus. But shares have plunged about 68% this year as Bitcoin prices slide too. The company has a market value of about $913 million. Chung has been working on mergers and acquisitions at the Japanese lender Nomura since 2014.